And start the recording. And Peter joining. I don't see Elise yet, but she doesn't need to be here for this. And we're all good to go on recording and stuff. So if you want to go ahead and get started at exactly 5:30, you are welcome to do that. And now it's 5:30.
All right, let's do this. All right, I will now call to order the October 21st meeting of the Salem Historic Landmark Commission. Will the recorder please take roll call?
Commissioner Cottingham?
Here.
Commissioner Kurtman?
Here.
Commissioner French?
Present.
Commissioner Fuller?
Here.
Commissioner Ponce?
Here.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Here.
Commissioner Thomas is connecting. Commissioner Thomas? I'll come back. Commissioner Zimmerman?
Here.
Oh, and Commissioner Thomas raised their hand. Fantastic. Commissioner Mulvihill is absent. We have established quorum.
Perfect. Thank you, Zach. All right, the commission will now hear testimony from the public concerning items not on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time?
So we have Marvin. If you'd like to turn on your camera and unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes. And I will share those photos while you're talking.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to tell the story of the difference between this Historic Landmarks Commission in 1990, 91.
Wait, sorry, Marvin, you need to state your name and address for the record.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot that.
I'm Marvin Sanus. I live at 640 15th Street Northeast. I own the old West Salem City Hall and have the author of the successful national nomination to the historic registry. So anyway, I bought the building from the city in 1989 and began the renovation. Our first tenant was on the second floor. We signed a 5-year lease. And we got him in, and the fire marshal comes over and will not approve our fire escape. And he says, well, you've got to have a blah, blah, blah. So Wayne Schmidt, our architect, drew a fire escape to code. The footprint of that fire escape, because of the number of steps, the risers, it would have taken 3 landings to get to the sidewalk. The footprint of that fire escape would have been almost the footprint of the building. So we took that drawing and that back to the city, and the Landmarks Commission, and Cecil Edwards was 90 years old and the chair of that Landmarks Commission. They came over, the whole commission came over and went down the fire escape. And Cecil said, that is far better than a fire. He said, I can use my hands. It's a ship's ladder fire escape. He said, that is so much better. And they said, they ordered the fire marshal to approve it. Well, Jim Tubner, who was the fire inspector at the time, came over to the building and he swore at me. He says, I did not know that anybody could overrule a fire and life safety issue. I've been ordered to approve that damn fire escape of yours. He says, now I want an engineer's report on that thing to show me that it's safe, to show me that it'll support so much. So anyway, it was approved, and that ship's ladder fire escape is there now. So anyway, there has been a huge difference between the amount of support I have felt from the city from then to now. What we have gone through since last March with that that it was a work of art that Mitch and Kathy Teal had built for the patio shelter. But we got no support at all from the mayor's office, from this commission, from I've talked to Kimberly a couple of times. I don't know what has happened. And then this commission has grown 3 times. I think there were 6 members in 1990. So anyway, it's been very, very frustrating. And not be the $3,800 for a historic landmark.
Marv, if you can wrap it up. Sorry, I think the 3 minutes has lapsed.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you for coming today and sharing a little bit. You know, I would encourage you, you know, the great thing about preservation is that we do have some great guidance out there through the National Park Service about how to do things creatively and still kind of in the spirit of historic preservation and to the materials. So maybe those are some links we can share with you, and please come back at a future meeting. I know, sorry, 3 minutes isn't very long, but I guess over the course of a year, you'd get 24 minutes.
Tracy,
so, great. Well, thank you, Marv. I'm not sure
I
if
am
you
going
can
to
back up.
explore delisting that building. I'm going to do that. I'm writing to the Parks Department and to see if we can get out from under this.
Well, thank you again for coming, Marv. And yeah, so all right. Well, so we've had our first public comment since I've been chair, and we will move on to approving the minutes. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Perfect. Commissioner French moved to approve the minutes and Commissioner Cottingham seconded. Were there any corrections? All right, hearing and no corrections. All those in favor of approving the minutes as written, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, no. All right, wonderful. The minutes passed. It looks like today we do not have any. Let me get my agenda open. Sorry, guys. It looks like we do not have any public hearings. And so I believe we will just jump into, that is the minutes. That is a staff report. There we go. We will jump into action items. And it looks like first we have consideration of the initiation of the local historic nomination for the for the state insurance company. Kimberly, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, Chair Schwartz. So this is, I think, the first time that you guys have had something like this come before you. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about the process as we go through it. But if you have any questions, please just let me know. So for the record, I'm Kimberly Fitzgerald, your Historic Preservation Officer. And so tonight you're here to take action on a request to designate the State Insurance Company building as a local historic resource. So the applicant, Kylie Pine, from the Willamette Heritage Center, she's here tonight. She's requested that the Salem Landmarks Commission initiate this nomination, which, as best as we know, was constructed in 1888, perhaps earlier. So according to Salem Revised Code, SRC 230.010C2, any person may file a request with the Salem City Council or the Landmarks Commission for initiation of the designation of a local historic resource. And so, but that said, you as the Landmarks Commission would then, and this is what you're going to determine this evening, you have to decide whether you're going to take action on that. So now I'm going to go through the specifics of first where it is. So this site is located at the northwest corner of Commercial and Chemeketa Streets. This is kind of an overview of the location and the tax lots. And then I'm going to jump right into the history and then show you some pictures of what it looks like today. So in the application, which you should have received a copy of, there's some information about the history. So as I mentioned earlier, best as we know, the building dates back to 1888, but it might date even earlier than that. It was first occupied by the Oregon Land Company. And the building is significant for its association with the work of this company and former President Herbert Hoover, who worked for the Oregon Land Company as a messenger boy here. The building also was occupied by the state insurance company, which you can see a picture here of when it was occupied by that company. And then it was also later occupied by the Salem YMCA. And the original structure was a good example of the commercial Second Empire architectural style here in Salem. So a little bit more about the YMCA. So the YMCA was first established in Salem in 1892. And they moved into the building, according to the YMCA history page, in 1901. And the picture on the screen shows the building in 1904 there at the top of your screen. And again, from the YMCA's their own history page, they installed the first indoor swimming pool in Salem in 1910. The building was owned by the Saffron Supply Company in 1960 when they applied for a demolition permit to demolish the top 2 stories of this 3-story building. The Star Exchange remained as a tenant in the building through 1976, and then it was remodeled for use as the Rising Sun record store in the 70s. So it may be hard for you to see, but the picture there on the upper right of your screen, that's a picture from the newspaper in 1960 showing the top 2 floors coming down. So the applicable criterion are in SRC 230.010, as I mentioned, and I'm going to go through them one at a time. So just to restate, in order to qualify for designation, it needs to meet the applicable criterion for age, significance, and integrity. So all 3. So first, age, the resource is approximately 133 years of age and maybe older. Therefore, staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find that this criterion has been met for age. So for significance, the resource has cultural significance for its contribution to Salem as a whole through its association with the Oregon Land Company and the Salem YMCA. The resource has human significance for its association with the life of former President Herbert Hoover. And additionally, I just want to mention the site has the potential to yield important information concerning prehistory or history for archaeology due to its location near the river, and it is within our cultural resource protection zone. But more testing would need to be done to confirm what is intact and whether it would meet the criteria. So while the original structure was a good example of Second Empire architectural style, the original form and character defining features of the building have been lost, especially due to the removal of the top 2 stories and that character defining roof. So it does not retain a high degree of integrity. So staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find that the resource is not currently a significant example of a particular architectural style. However, it does have potential cultural and human significance. Okay, so last, integrity. The building does not retain significant integrity due to the removal of the top 3 stories in 1960. And additional exterior modifications have included the installation of awnings, both square and rounded, as well as additional interior and exterior remodeling to accommodate the needs of the tenants over time. So staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find the resource does not retain sufficient integrity to convey the historical significance, and so that this criterion has not been met. And I'm realizing, forgive me, I just want to make sure I actually showed you a picture of what it looks like today. Did I show that, or did I? Okay, cool, because it's like going too fast. Okay, so now last, your alternatives are, so you don't have to take any action. So if the HLC finds that the threshold for initiation of local historic designation has not been met, the HLC can find that the proposed resource is not eligible for designation due to its lack of historic integrity. And the second alternative is that if the HLC does find that the applicant has made the case, then you can find that the proposed resource is eligible and therefore proceed with initiating the process for designation. So that concludes my staff report. I'm going to stop sharing so you can actually see each other.
And Kimberly, I know we have the initiant of this application here. Because this is an action item, are we allowed to take public, like offer her the opportunity to speak to it and then go to questions
Yes.
for you? Okay. So yeah, Kylie, if you'd like to speak or highlight anything, please go for that. If you could just make sure you state your name and address for the record. You can also decline if you don't want to.
My name is Kylie Pine and my address is 2170 Church Street Southeast. And I think Kimberly made a very good summary of the proposal, so I don't have any more really to add other than, as a historian in this area, finding the significance of this building is important, and feeling that the only way to be able to encourage solutions to the space within the mitigation, which may be your next action item, is to actually have a designation listed on there to provide a little bit more impetus for resources to be focused on the mitigation process. So,
thank you. Kimberly, I know there's someone else. Is that the next action item? Okay, just wanted to double check. All right, so we can now take questions for staff. Commissioner French.
Thank you. So Kimberly, looking at the discussion of significance and then the discussion of integrity, it seems like the integrity discussion only pertains to the architectural significance, but not to the cultural or human significance, which were identified. Is there a reason why?
Because we just there's been no testing done. So we don't have the information we need currently to do a sufficient evaluation. So there's no one here from urban development, unfortunately, but they are working on, as I understand it, preparing an RFP, and they are aware that archaeological compliance and work needs to happen. I did speak with John Pauly, and as you know,
Sure.
and he did indicate that it could potentially be significant, but there would need to be testing.
Sure, but I'm also speaking to, like, we say it's culturally significant for the historic identity of Salem, for its association with the Oregon Land Company and the YMCA, for its association with Herbert Hoover, but none of those are part of the integrity argument. So I'm just wondering if that is just like the way our code is written, or if there's, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I disagree, and I think the code should be rewritten to reflect that, because integrity deals with the reason it's significant, not just architecture, an argument I have many times. So
yeah, I will say though that it is possible to revisit this after the archaeological work has been done. I don't know if that helps you.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Hi, yeah, I was curious, Kimberly, what would this designation do or not do if we were to approve this? It doesn't necessarily guarantee that like the building itself would be preserved in any way, right? I'm just kind of curious kind of what this, I guess, what kind of framework this would provide or not do.
Right. So I can relate it most closely to, I think, because most of you were on the commission, maybe not all of you, for the review of the proposed demolition of the Marion Car Park. And so while that wasn't locally designated, it was a contributing resource within the National Register District. The process was the same. So what would happen, let's pretend that this building or buildings were designated as a local resource. Then prior to being able to get a demolition permit, then they would need to come before the Landmarks Commission and prepare a proposal showing how the applicable criteria have been met. And I don't know if you remember, were you on the commission then?
Yeah.
You remember? Yeah. So one of the criteria in particular is proposing that or outlining and demonstrating that the proposed use of the property is of a higher benefit to the community than the existing use. And they also need to demonstrate they've explored adaptive reuse. So those are two key, there's actually 4 criteria, but that would be the biggest difference. It would not necessarily prevent the demolition, but it would kind of set a higher bar. And I think as you experienced with the review of the Marion Car Park, it did allow the commission to add some conditions on interpretation with the redevelopment, which the next action item relating to mitigation would also do.
Okay, thanks, Kimberly.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions for staff? I have a question, Kimberly. So I've noticed it's just outside of the historic district. Was it omitted from the original boundary because of the development or the modifications in the 70s? Do we know?
That's my understanding. Yeah. In fact, I had a brief discussion. Well, I'll talk more about this in the second action item, but I did have a brief discussion with the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office. And of course, the staff person I spoke with wasn't around during that. So I did ask that question as well. And that was what he was able to see, was that it was all about the boundary defense at that point.
Perfect. Yeah, I would highlight maybe a little bit to Jamie's question, to me, kind of looking at the code. I agree. I think our code is definitely written more towards buildings. I think that we do need to make maybe a distinction in what we're talking about here. It seems like Kylie's focus on this, and Kylie, if I'm putting words in your mouth, you're capturing this incorrectly, please stop me. And just kind of how I'm understanding this, it maybe really is more building focused versus kind of what might be below the building. We often know that there's buildings and sites and a lot of complex history going on, but I kind of tend to view it more as talking about the building and that association with Hoover. That would have been where it happened. And, I think that definitely kind of reading the integrity thing, it just doesn't seem to me like it has, I know I'm jumping into debate here, sorry, but just want to speak to it. It to me, I think we have to keep like that period of significance in mind. And if Hoover is kind of the significance in like that early Salem history, I don't know if that, I probably just muddied the waters, but just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so are there any other questions for staff? Commissioner Cottingham.
Yeah, this is just to be clear. So question for staff would be, I know the next item is related to this, discussing mitigation. And you also addressed Commissioner French saying that some of these items can be talked about, revisited in the future. Can you just clarify what the decision on this item will have, how it would relate to any other things we do or not?
Right. So it's tied so closely to the next action item, but let me try and be concise. So let's say that during your deliberations and you debate back and forth what you should do, and you make a decision at this time not to proceed with initiating the designation request, but that after you talk it out, that you do believe that there may be a potential for some future revisiting, especially of any sort of archaeological resource designation. You could, we could document that in the discussion, in the notes, and then my understanding of urban development's plan is that they're moving forward with just demolition down to the foundation, so they're not going to go below grade now, and so that's good in that then future testing can happen and we can get more information about it. And so after that has happened, then either the Landmarks Commission could look at initiating again just for the archaeological piece, or just wait, because I do know that a portion of the site, the Salem Housing Authority is looking at redeveloping for low-income housing, in which case Section 106 would be triggered. And as at least two of you know, the compliance process would include a bit more at that point. That wouldn't, and the HLC would be involved as a stakeholder. So I guess a long answer to your question, Carol, is that if you're concerned, it is possible to revisit this issue at a future time.
Thank you.
Commissioner French.
I just want to clarify that my concerns are not necessarily archaeological in nature. it is relating to the fact that a site can be listed regardless of of whether it retains artifacts or not. Like if this location is important to the history, then that regardless of whether it's a blank parking lot, it still can be important. And so I know, Schwartz, the integrity argument is different, and it has to be pretty big to raise that level. But I just want to like clarify that I'm not talking about archaeology. I'm talking about the integrity of it as a historic place in Salem.
So, and I guess then I need to re-clarify that, yes, our local code is written in such a way that in order to be eligible for listing, it has to retain sufficient integrity. And yes, we are speaking generally, I think when this was written, about buildings, honestly, above ground, to be able to convey that period of significance. And it's a critical part. It doesn't mean that the history isn't important. It's just for designation and regulation and the way that our code works. If you think through it, you know, all the pieces of our code are about preserving those character defining features so that it can continue to convey that integrity, that story. And if those don't exist, then how are you going to do your job? It makes it really hard. So that's my way of explanation. So.
No, and I appreciate that clarification as well, Jamie. You know, every day it's just looking at those 7 aspects, and yeah, no, I get it. That's a good reminder. Thank you.
I was having a discussion today, and we talk about the fact that listed on the National Register is a field where they believe Lewis and Clark unfurled their flag, and that is the only reason it's significant, and that's the only reason it is still a field today, is because they unfurled a flag there. And so, if you think about kind of what we tend to think about, like the natural spaces at times are just as important. We've been talking a lot about Bush Pasture Park and things like that. Like those natural spaces that don't have what we identify as architecture or really historic features, like are just as important as the buildings and the stuff that people left behind.
Oh, it hurts my brain. It's been, I can't go there right now. Yes. Okay. So are there any other questions for staff? All right. So at this point, it sounds like we have 2 choices. We can either,
never mind. Kylie doesn't have a rebuttal. Hilarious. Cause she didn't, sorry. I just wanted to see if.
Oh, yes.
Kylie,
did you have any closing remarks?
Actually, I do.
Okay, there you go.
So in terms of the architectural significance, true, the entire building does not exist, but there are features of significance that do exist on the exterior, including the windows and the chimney, and on the interior too, including several different features in there, which I know don't technically fall into the general conversation about exterior buildings and what they look like in terms of the National Register's recommendations, but they do exist. And yeah, ideas of beyond preserving the building, having access to the building to be able to do documentation, to be able to better document that is the reason why this was submitted.
Thank you. Okay, so no more questions for staff. That lovely closing. So I guess we're at a point, we have 2 choices. We can either sit quietly and move on to the next action item, taking no action on this one, or we can have a motion to initiate the local landmark designation for the state insurance company building.
I have one last question then. I know the outcome, if it is found to be significant and stuff like that, but if we initiate the process, that just initially kind of initiates like a fact-finding kind of section, like to prepare the documents, or that says, yes, we think it's significant and we list it.
That would start our type 4 legislative designation process, which is, yes.
I think I've been through. Okay.
It's a bit more formal than just a little bit of fact finding.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna count to 7. All right, hearing no motions, we will not be taking action on moving this request to initiate local historic resource nomination for the state insurance company building forward. I do want to thank Kylie immensely for putting all this information together. These are those buildings that are hard. They make us rethink everything we learned in school and all of the standards that we had. And as I know, Jamie and I, next time we see each other over a glass of wine, are going to get into a great debate regarding this. I mean, this is the ones that make us think, and it's good. I think, unfortunately, just the way our code is written, we just have, as currently written, and this is always something we can go back to and reconsider, I just don't think we have the integrity to move this forward. That said, though, I am grateful that you did the legwork to do this. You put all this great information together and you brought it to our attention. This isn't something we would have thought about. It's outside of the district. Obviously things are happening there, which we're going to talk about in 30 seconds. So I do really want to thank you, Kylie, for the engagement on this. And hopefully something good comes out of this. If nothing else, it initiated our next action item. So thank you. And with that, back to Kimberly for the action item to discuss mitigation for the state insurance company building.
Wait, did Jessica have something?
Sorry, Jessica.
I was just kind of debating. I just wanted to say thank you, Kylie, as well, because this was fantastic to learn about and read, and really, really, really painful to not do anything. And it's also hard for me personally just to look at the outside. So I'm curious on what the next action item is going to be.
Marcus sounds like he's also curious. So
he is reading, he's fascinated with my giant tome of building maintenance guidance for Oregon. So I think he's read it more than I have.
Awesome. Okay, Kimberly, sale and mitigation.
All right. For the record, Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. We're here to discuss the sale and future mitigation plan for the former UGM mission block. So first, I'm going to start by sharing the location, which is a slightly bigger area than the site map you saw for the previous action item. So it includes the former state insurance company building, the Saffron building, and the former UGM mission building, as well as, well, for the record, I'll read, it's 311, 325, 345, 355, 365 Commercial Street Northeast, and 279 and 263 and 291 Chemeketa Street Northeast, and then 240 to 270 Center Street, and then 350 and 360 Front Street Northeast. Wah, wah. Okay, so now I'm going to just do some like overview. This is Google Earth. I love Google Earth, you guys. Oh my gosh. So here's a picture of the overall block, and then some street views of the northern frontage showing the UGM building, and then like the parking lot there at the back. And then this is the western frontage. I had a really hard time getting a good view of that building with all the trees in front of it, but there's that one building. And then that other corner here, I don't know if you can see that's not included in this. And then this is the southern frontage, which I think you saw pictures in the previous action item of our great building, which lost the top 2 stories. And then the eastern frontage. Okay, so as you guys are now like super experts on the mitigation process in Oregon under ORS 358-653 requires consultation whenever a public agency is selling an eligible historic property to a private owner, and the public agency is required to consider effects on historic resources and determine whether the undertaking will have an adverse effect. And if yes, then mitigation is required. And in this case, I think this is the first time that you guys have weighed in this early. Usually the HLC is a stakeholder, and you get to comment on the plan, the mitigation after Oregon SHPO has concurred that there has been an adverse effect. This is, you're getting involved super early. No consultation has yet been initiated with SHPO. There's the public agency in this case is the Urban Development Department. They have not made a determination yet whether or not they believe there will be an adverse effect. Again, there needs to be a bit more work done on that. So what they are wanting, and unfortunately, no one from urban development was able to attend tonight, but they will look at the recording and at your direction, if you direct staff to write up a letter, then they will look at that. So they're looking for input from the HLC in order to adequately prepare a proposal for mitigation should it be required. So that's the nuance difference in this particular case. So I won't jump in to a full discussion of the history because you just had that, but here's our few pictures. There is more history relating to the larger block, which we need a little bit more exploration about, and perhaps Richard, who's here tonight, can share a little bit about that. I know he has a presentation as well. Regarding the code itself, which I know you're also familiar with, the mitigation section, SRC 230082, demolition, which is what's being proposed, is a level 3 adverse effect, which in our code, the recommended mitigation is an ILS level building documentation, which I think is what Kylie had asked about, both inside and out, and then on-site interpretation. And then should the agency not have the capacity to do that kind of work, then a donation to our Historic Preservation Trust Fund. And then should it be needed, any notification regarding archaeological sites. And in this case, again, it's in our CRPZ zone. We just don't know. It's close to the river. There's a high probability, but there's been no testing done. So here's a little bit more details about the salvage plan, which were also included in your packet. So the Urban Development Department has already created an initial list inventory for their salvage plan, which includes the identification of some key architectural features to be salvaged. I think Kylie had mentioned the window. There's some cast iron columns on the exterior, which they are hoping to salvage prior to demolition. Then on the interior, there's this really cool bank vault, which has like a gargoyle thing on the top. And then old growth structural beams. There's a exterior wooden slider door, like you have at the Willamette Heritage Center, Kylie. And then there's some cool wallpaper on the interior from in parts of it, which when it was used as a residence. And then, you know, the question about brick salvage and just honestly documentation of some of the cool signs inside. So I'll wrap up. Again, your alternatives are no action because, again, it's so early. You don't have any regulatory authority here, so you don't have to do anything. But you could choose to direct staff to write a letter of recommendation to the Urban Development Department recommending proposed mitigation for redevelopment, demolition of the buildings, if you so choose. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. And it sounds like you mentioned Richard is here. So
Yes.
Richard, if you would like to give I think, brief chit chat or presentation and just state your name and address for the record before you start, that'd be great.
Hello, I'm Richard Nelson, and my address is 1100 Chemeketa Street, apartment 408, Salem, Oregon, 97301. And I can get started on this presentation. I'm kind of just talking about the state insurance building, or I'm just calling it the Hoover building. But there are other buildings on site that are important. Okay.
Hey,
All
Kimberly.
right, so is that working for everyone?
No, we can't see it. Did you select the screen to share?
I did. Oh, here it is. There we go.
There. Yep, got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we
It
go. Okay,
worked.
awesome. Third time on Zoom, so here we go.
Good job.
So I also wanted to point out that the site is kind of in the middle of the original 1848 platting of the city of Salem. So the site is in red here, and it's sort of in the middle of the platting. I overlaid a drawing from 1848 over the modern streetscape to kind of show that it's sort of in the middle of that original platting. And then the building actually is an addition to an 1871 building that shows up in this cartoon fashion of the isometric plan map of the city of 1876. So, and I have more documentation to show that. I also found newspaper articles as well that talk about the opening of the building and some of the other buildings on site as well. There is one photo, so I'm glad this one exists, that shows the original building in an Italianate style, which was built in 1871, and then later would have a remodel to do the addition, which is shown more frequently and is the same period as Minthorn and Hoover arrive. So this color-coded photo really shows kind of how this building works. The red section is the original 1871 building, and then they continued actually the architectural detailing and styling and matched it up to make it symmetrical with the central tower. And so the green section is the 1888 addition. This building is shown in around 1930. And then this yellow section is an addition, I think probably around 1900. That was probably done by the YMCA that filled in the alleyway between this building and the 1888 addition. So these are Sanborn fire insurance maps. So the one on the left is from 1884 and shows the original footprint of the building from 1871. And then if you overlay the 1890 fire insurance map, you can really see that the dashing here shows that the original building was integrated into the addition. And so it wasn't demolished, it was integrated in, and that's proven both by these insurance maps and by the photographs showing detailing of the existing Italianate building. So I just wanted to give a brief site timeline. So the building was built in 1871, that section of it. And then the state insurance was founded in 1884 with Minthorn. Oh, I also wanted to mention, because I think this is something that isn't talked about enough, Herbert Hoover was an orphan. So really, like, his uncle was his father. I mean, like, essentially adopted father. So I think that's one thing that does get forgotten. But yes, so anyway, so the state insurance company was founded in 1884, and Herbert Hoover's uncle was president. Minthorn and Hoover, their family, moved to the Highland area in 1888, and the building was remodeled in 1888, and then they also founded the streetcar in 1888. The first streetcar service was started in 1889 and was horse-drawn. And then the Hoover worked in the building from 1888 to 1891. And then YMCA moved into the building in 1892. And then also Minthorn platted a lot of Salem as well. So like the Highland Edition where he lived was part of his land development, and he did some other additions too. So the streetcar lines were part of his land development because back in those days, people had to have a way to get to land to be able to live there and buy it. So land developers often, owned the streetcar, actually pretty much exclusively owned streetcar lines in order to be able to develop land. And so he started that as a part of his platting of Salem and land development. Also, Herbert Hoover was a streetcar operator on his uncle's line. So this is the site condition today of that building. The upper floors were removed to modernize the building. However, the building's more intact than it looks. The original cast iron is actually from that 1888 edition because it enlarged the length of the building. So what's really cool is that cast iron was actually made in Salem, a number of blocks away from the Salem foundry. So not only is it from that period of Hoover and his uncle, but it's also actually made in Salem, like 3 blocks away, which I think is really cool. And then also the window is still intact, not only just its opening, but the actual sash and everything itself. With those detailing, it looks like it's in really bad condition, but honestly, a lot of the buildings on site are so covered up by them trying to look modern that it's kind of hard to tell what's actually on site with these awnings. You really have to look up and then you can see the Victorian proportions. So as in the same design theory and fashion as an 1888 edition, this building was an 1871 building that was added onto sensitively and had an addition to what my proposal for creating a viable, economically viable and relevant preservation based building would be to preserve the lower floor and then reconstruct up to the roof line and then create like a mid-rise building that would basically help the building to have economic vitality and viability for the city of Salem while still maintaining its original details. And this could be a hotel, it could be housing, it could be an office building, but there's plenty of classical architects that could figure out how to restore this building and make it viable for the contemporary period. So the other thing I wanted to state, and it's really hard for us to imagine and understand this, but really streetcars are so influential to America and how our cities work that it's kind of hard for us to imagine that because we live in a car-centric society. But really, like, Herbert Hoover's uncle founded the streetcar line, and all of the major roads in Salem and how the city was founded and platted and everything about our modern city is based off of how those streetcar lines expanded over time. And so in a lot of ways, I find that this site really is kind of a second founding site for modern Salem. If you really look at what Salem looked like in 1888, it was pretty minimal. The streetcar lines really are what made Salem into the modern city that we have today. So I think it's very unique that we live in a capital city, but also a capital city that was so influentially platted and designed, and how our whole city is constructed really was influenced by this family. And I think that this site really is where that actually manifests itself. So, and they had a vested interest in it. But also, this is the site on, this is a 1979, excuse me, superimposed map of the streetcar lines. And then the streetcar barn was like not even a block away, diagonally across. So you can really see that it is where that was started, and everything expands radially out from that point, really proving that that really is where those lines were founded. So in conclusion, there's a lot more to talk about in regards to this site. I just wanted to lead with the best foot forward because there are actually a number of other older buildings and other buildings on site that also have significance. But I just wanted to talk about really this site and its significant importance Herbert Hoover's house in Highland has been remodeled to the point of non-recognition. So this is really the only site in Salem that has any significance to any of our most important political figures. Charles Lindsay McNary would be the other one. And sadly, all of those sites were lost. So we really don't have any political sites. They actually knew each other as well. So, but they grew up together, but we don't have anything. So this is all we have. I'd prefer us to take the Dresden approach instead of the Salem approach with this, which is if it's not in perfect condition, we can't save it, or we can reconstruct something that's been damaged by time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Richard. That was incredibly well researched. I love that. Sweet. So I think at this point, do we have any questions for staff regarding the mitigation for the larger site, not just the one structure, the building, sorry. Commissioner French.
Yeah, just a clarifying question, Kimberly. This is something the city owns the entire block other than that
Correct.
one corner. And the proposal is they are selling it to private interests and they're going to do whatever they want, right? So the city, once the sale goes through, the city essentially has no
Correct.
say in what happens.
But to clarify, the city is going to demolish the buildings. They want to apply for permits to demolish the buildings down to the foundation prior to the sale.
Okay.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Thanks. I was kind of curious, just kind of what Kimberly was saying about the demolition. Is there a reason why the city's taking that approach? Because it sounds like there is some potential with these buildings. If we look through downtown with some of these older buildings that have been covered up, kind of like the electric apartments on Liberty, you know, they kind of found a new life after they've kind of all of that covering from when it was Anderson Sporting Goods got removed and the buildings were refurbished and kind of found new life. What's prompted the city to kind of take the approach of just demolishing the site and then having it completely redeveloped?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no one here from urban development to answer that question. And all I know, and maybe Lisa can weigh in, the urban renewal agencies made a directed urban development to proceed down this path. I know they own all the property, and they did identify a need for low-income housing, and that this was one of the sites they identified for using a portion of the site for the housing authority to develop low-income housing, but then to sell the rest to a private developer. And I can't speak to the details of whether other alternatives were explored. I simply don't know. I can certainly pass that question along.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just kind of curious because we've seen so many of these buildings over the past decade or 20 years in downtown Salem where there's been a lot of effort to kind of refurbish these buildings instead of demolition, or just kind of letting them go by the wayside. You know, people have put a lot of effort into kind of bringing them up and really bringing more life into these buildings that, you know, on the surface kind of look like they were tired and were kind of headed toward demolition themselves. So I was just kind of really interested in seeing kind of where this, which way the city was thinking with these. And I guess just one other question. Do you know what the ages are of those other buildings, the Saffron building and that UGM Mission building? Because in the information we received, I don't think it necessarily stated the ages on those.
No. And again, I don't have all of that information yet. That's part of what's going to be compiled. I don't know if, Richard, that's something you have handy, or Kylie, but urban development is working on developing that.
Okay.
Some of them are from, well, at least the Cooper shop is from 1871 as well, because those two buildings were built together. And as far as I know, those buildings still exist. It's really hard to tell with the site, as you kind of mentioned, with like tin being covered up covering everything. But I did see that there was definitely signs of that building still existing because there's a piece of tin that fell off, thank goodness. And there are bricks that are of that period. So it really looks like the two smaller buildings are probably from one's from 1871. And then there's another one that's probably from around the 1880s that has the other, excuse me, cast iron that's been painted brown. But that building I haven't been able to research more because I kind of put all my eggs in the Hoover basket. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions for staff? I have a couple, Kimberly. So I just want to be really clear. The city of Salem has not initiated any ORS 358653 or Section 106 consultation, meaning they have not done any effort to identify if any of the buildings on the site, looking past the Hoover building, any of those buildings are eligible for listing in the National Register.
Correct. We're still very early. And so part of that process will be to document the age. As we're speaking, I am looking through there was an information report that was forwarded to me from Urban Development, which is from which summarizes like the value of the property and also includes some of the age information. But as you know, for the clearance, we need to be do a little bit more due diligence. So certainly once we get that information, we could certainly bring it back to the commission. And then, you could be involved in a little bit of a more normal way, after that consultation has been initiated, right? And then you can certainly weigh in like you would normally about whether or not you concur with the mitigation proposed, if that is how it moves forward. Again, this is a little unusual in that you're being asked really super early without a whole lot of information.
So we could, so right now you propose the action items. Oh, sorry, here, I'll let Commissioner Ponce go, then I'll ask this question. Commissioner Ponce.
So thank you. Wonderful presentation. I really did enjoy that. That was very well done. The question I have is that if we were to defer until the project developed a little further along and we weren't ahead of it, would there be benefit in learning more about the other structures? Seems like we're pretty far in front of all that other due diligence, and I'm just wondering what the option is there for bringing this back at a later date.
Yeah, certainly, as I mentioned at the beginning, you're not required to do anything at all. I think that the benefit of providing at least some input, some direction early on now might be for them to hear things from the commission about what you might like to see. So for example, Commissioner Zimmerman's question about, have you considered adaptive reuse? Maybe that might be something. Or if you did like Richard's concept of maybe saving part of it and looking at that one corner being developed by a reconstruction. I mean, I think because you're being involved early, you have a unique opportunity to perhaps influence where you haven't in other situations.
Thank you.
Commissioner French, I do see your hand, but I just want to ask this because it piggies back really well off Commissioner Ponce. So you had no action, you had comment on the mitigation, but in some ways we could also table, but still offer comments and request that urban development come back, maybe with some more information on the history of the entire site, eligibility determinations, those dates, like all of that stuff that we're kind of asking about.
Yeah, I mean, you could be as specific as, could you please come back? You could decide. I mean, you could ask them to come back prior to consultation, initiating consultation, or just say, well, just let's chat after you've initiated that consultation and landed somewhere on whether there's an adverse effect or not. I mean, that's also an option. You can choose when.
Perfect. Awesome. Commissioner French.
Yeah. So what I was thinking, piggybacking off of what you just asked, actually, was that I'm proposing we not actually speak to the mitigation, but we write a letter to to the urban
Are you
development.
making a motion or are you asking a question?
I'm asking a question.
Okay.
that
Sorry,
may
I just
turn
want to make
into a
sure I'm
motion,
capturing.
that may turn into a motion, but encouraging the urban development department to rethink their demolition plan and potentially look for either lessees or lessees that are interested in keeping properties of historic significance or keeping the most important portions as the portions that the city will develop on their own, per the plan that I think Richard showed as the one building, which I think would make a lovely low-income housing building, but done in a historic style. Thoughts, I guess?
So, hold on. So Kimberly, it sounds like, yes, we could do that. Right?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
just so that, yeah, so you can direct staff to write a letter to recommend that they consider this, but I would hope that you would also provide some clarification about specifics. So that like, including, add on there when you might like for them to come back. Because I think it would have been quite beneficial to have a representative from Urban here. I think it would have made a big difference in helping you understand the background and context and the direction that they received from council as part of the Urban Renewal Agency. But yeah, absolutely. You're free to direct staff to write a letter that states what you would prefer and request that they have more information about why they are proceeding down the path they are.
And then I had one more question about, in regards to the salvage materials. I saw a lot of really beautiful things there that they were intending on salvaging, but I guess my question is, are they making those available to other people in the downtown district that have buildings of a similar age? Are they donating them to the museum? Are they giving them to a place that will sell them? Like, salvage material sounds great, but you got to find someone that's willing to take it and use it. And without that, it's a big pile of bricks sitting in someone's warehouse.
Again, I think it's super early. I don't think they've thought it through that far yet. So, right. I think that additionally, any direction you have regarding what to do with it would be greatly appreciated. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, Jimmy, I don't know if we can freestyle speak to what you just said without emotion. But I think, I would be happy to entertain that motion.
I just want to put it out there so other people can talk.
Yeah, I would just also point out that this is as it's an informational topic, I think that we can be discussing without a motion, unless we get to a point of decision. It's based on the things that were, oh, sorry, nice. And I had another thing, I didn't raise my hand. But based on some of the things that were just shared, I guess also, no, I cannot. I'm sorry, I was just asked to pause my meeting. This is a question for you, Kimberly, I think, but as far as the timeline, I know that this is really early in the process. I know that we don't have everyone here that can answer some of the questions. Do you know, like, what is a reasonable timeline that we would like if we are requesting to revisit this, including with other people from the city, like what that timeline looks like?
So I think my understanding is that they are wanting to move quickly in terms of pulling demolition permits. So they're wanting, and I say quickly, my understanding is that this winter. So I think if you wanted to invite them back, I think that our next meeting or the meeting after would be a good time to do that as soon as possible, because unless you want them to have concluded that consultation with SHPO, which as most of you know, it takes at least 30 to 45 days to do that. So I think sooner as opposed to later would be better, so that they can have a good opportunity to hear from you what you are interested, what recommendations you have. And I don't know if that helps you, but I do know that they are interested in drafting the RFP soon and getting the the buildings down as soon as they can.
Perfect.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Fonts?
It does feel that way, that there's a timeline for demolition, but I would like to somehow maybe consider that language that we're being presented with one tax lot, and it's part of the much larger project or property there. And then obviously I wasn't aware that there's other older structures, in this considered project. And, we're reviewing one tax lot. Well, those other late 1800 buildings are adjacent to it or kitty corner to it. And we're not hearing really about the history of those buildings or their contents or the significance of those, but they're already in that larger, I guess, plot to, I don't mean plot in the way that they're scheming something, just the larger building plot that we're not hearing about those buildings. So maybe if we could look at the project or be presented with a more concise and comprehensive, by tax lot, the history of those buildings before, they take action on that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, it's almost 6:40. We still have a lot of discussion items tonight. So I would like to push us towards getting some decision that we can discuss on the table just to keep us moving. Sorry, Commissioner French.
Yeah, I've been writing notes, so hopefully I'll get this in one shot. I would like to recommend the city staff write a letter to the Urban Development Department recommending action, not mitigation, because we're not there yet. Encouraging them to entertain options to avoid demolishing the historic structures. And then also encouraging them to work on an ILS for the two oldest buildings on the lot. Perhaps Kylie might be interested in participating in something of that nature. And then also suggesting that they come back to us when they have at least an RLS of the proposed demolition area. With information regarding how they intend to disperse the salvage materials.
Okay, let's see here. All right, Commissioner French moved that we demand staff. That's not the right word.
Command
staff.
Direct.
Thank you. Put that down before I forget. All right, we direct request direct. Sorry, I was like, that's not right. Request staff to write a letter to the urban development group requesting that they take action and encouraging them to consider the following: avoidance of demolition, that they complete, Jamie, I'm going to alter your wording here a little bit, but let me know if I didn't capture what you want, that they complete National Register eligibility evaluations for all of the properties, and that they come back to us to present that, and then also offer a more detailed salvage plan that actually has a plan. Did I do okay, Jamie?
You got it.
Okay.
That is my motion. She just said it perfectly.
Perfect. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Kimberly, really quick.
Oh, sorry. So sorry. Just a point of clarification. Do you want them to have initiated consultation with SHPO before they come back to you with those eligibility evaluations?
I think that's a moot point. At the end of the day, they're going to need SHPO consultation to determine to have that kind of check and balance to know if the sites are eligible. I mean, if they want to come to us with that and we could offer comment on it, that's up to them. But I'm of the opinion procedurally, if they're in the 358 world, they can just do that between them and SHPO. But I mean, I don't know.
I'm just looking for direction because normally they would come to you after that consultation. This goes back to the weirdness of where we are in the process. So just if you don't want to wait for that, then that's fine.
I would say, as it's my motion, that I do not, this is outside of, irregardless of the SHPO timeline, I would like them to come back once they have those nominations prepared and have information to share with us.
Okay.
And then that can be what it is.
Agree. All right. Commissioner French moved and Commissioner Zimmerman seconded that we request staff write a letter to the Urban Redevelopment Agency requesting that they take greater action and encourage them to consider avoidance of the demolition of the site, that they complete National Register evaluations of all properties. And we would like to see those whenever they get to them. We are not tied to the SHPO timeline, and that they come back to present those findings as well as a more detailed salvage plan at a future HLC meeting. Commissioner French, to your motion.
Yeah, this one hurts my heart a lot because I see there's a lot of potential covered up over 1970s metal. And I wish those top two floors were on that building, so it'd be really a slam dunk, but it's not. I think there's a lot of people that are very interested in this building and these lots. I think the fact that it probably should have been incorporated into the Salem Downtown Historic District, but isn't, is also a really difficult part of this. And so I think anything the city can do at this point to get out ahead of those concerns would be a benefit to them, because if this many people are interested when this is just starting, it's only going to get more difficult as development plans continue.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Zimmerman?
Thank you. I feel like there's just so many questions that still need to be answered by city staff before things progress to the point of demolition here. I mean, with each of these buildings, there could be, certain aspects that we don't have in downtown that are covered up by the sheet metal, or once they start digging through some of that old coverings in some of these buildings, and we might see a lot of value in them. And just the push to hurry up and demolish them and then figure out later about redeveloping the site. I feel like there's a different approach, and hopefully the motion that Commissioner French made, and hopefully the city comes back next month or by the end of the year with some more detailed information, can help us feel more comfortable and confident with the way that the city wants to progress with things.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner Zimmerman. Is any other discussion on the motion? All right. I'm absolutely in favor of this motion. I think regardless of the site, the city has fallen outside of all process, and this is going to bring them back into the process. I really don't think we can or should be discussing mitigation if we don't understand the eligibility of the property. Similar to Commissioner Zimmerman's point, there's a lot to these properties. I mean, we spent the whole evening really just talking about one. There's so many sites on this property. And I would remind everyone that at this point, Salem's downtown and the urban renewal that happened in there in the 60s and early 70s could have historic significance in its own right. It really changed the landscape of our downtown in a big way. And yeah, that maybe falls outside of what we typically think of when we think about preservation, and especially when we think of our historic downtown. It's far outside of that historic period of significance, but it absolutely changed our landscape and changed the history of Salem. So that is also something I think the city needs to consider. And I think that this motion really puts the city back into compliance and back into like the set processes that are there. And that is to do your identification, assess your effects, and then mitigate if needed. And potentially we might find that none of these properties have historic significance, or they don't have integrity to convey that. And that's something we can deal with then. Urban renewal obviously can still do whatever they want. They can still put a salvage plan in place, and we can support that. They can do interpretation. But I really think we need to make sure, I mean, as a landmark commission, we're all about our code. We're all about making sure you fall within that. And I think this is really, really important that we say to urban renewal, hey, there's a state law that's really important to us, and you need to follow that and be part of that. So I'm absolutely in favor of this motion. I'm really thankful that this is hopefully where we end up as a commission. And yeah, I think this is the right way to go. And I'm really excited actually to see kind of what the eligibility of those other properties throughout the entire site is. So Awesome. With that, let's take a vote on the motion to request that staff write a letter to the Urban Renewal Agency asking them to take greater action and encouraging them to avoid demolition of the site, to complete National Register evaluations for all properties on the site, and to come back to the HLC at a future meeting with those eligibility evaluations and a more detailed salvage plan. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, no. I voted aye. I forgot to say it, Zach. Sorry. Perfect. With that, the motion passes. Kimberly, it sounds like you've got a letter to write. I look forward to reviewing it.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll get it done. All right, guys, we got through those action items. Thank you again to Kylie, and definitely thank you to Richard for this one, for that really amazing presentation. I really hope the city reaches out to you for some of those great maps and overlays. I think that'll really enhance their eligibility evaluations. And I look forward to seeing them and hope you guys come back at future meetings. So thank you both so much. We are gonna move on to discussion items. Looks like our first one is a presentation from Commissioner Kerdeman and Commissioner French on Archaeology Month.
So you guys, I'm just going to click when you tell me to.
Okay. So we were approached by Kimberly to kind of talk a little bit about what archaeology kind of looks like in Oregon, as Jessica and I are the archaeologists that are on this. And so let's just go ahead. This is Jessica's going to start us off, and then I'll take the really boring portion, and then she'll come in for the finish.
Yeah, I'll provide the carbs to our sandwich. Jamie will have all the meat. So October is typically Archaeology Month for Oregon. And so that's why this is appropriate time for us to kind of talk about archaeology and how it relates to us and the commission and Oregonians and everything. So the first thing is why it matters. That's a big question we get. I get it in my family members all the time, but it helps preserve a sense of place and ties us to the past. And that picture of like that weird fibrous thing, that is ancient human poop. Really tying us to the past. Everyone poops. Okay, go ahead, Kimberly. So first off, what is an archaeology site? It's essentially any group of artifacts and or features. Features are things that you can't really like pick up and move very easily. So like staining and like shell middens, which the middle picture shows. On federal land, it's anything 50 years or older. And on state land, anything 75 years or older. So these are, sorry, what?
Clarification, it depends on the project proponent, not just the land. A federal project on state lands does 50 years. So it's super fun.
I apologize.
And confusing.
Yeah, so you kind of have to follow the money on that one. So there's land ownership and money, where the money is coming from. And this image just kind of shows a couple of those examples. The tree over there is a culturally modified tree. There's a shell midden there. It's eroding on the coast. Bottle dumps, can dumps, and then a teeny tiny arrowhead. All right, next slide.
Okay, so now this is the super boring, meaty part. So there are actually numerous laws that protect archaeological sites in not just the federal level, but also at the state level. The Antiquities Act kind of set us off along with the Historic Sites Act. But the big one that came along was the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. And that's the one that kind of made it so that when federal agencies or anything that involves federal money or land or things like that are going through, they have to consider historic properties, which includes archaeological sites, when they're doing their project. And that was kind of the first big protection that came out of when they were building all the freeway overpasses through low income cemeteries back in the 60s when they were building the interstate system. This is kind of the big impetus for this. The Archaeological Resources Protection Act of 1979 protected archaeological sites on federal land. And then there's the Shipwreck Act of 1988, which kind of protects ships. It's debatable as far as my interpretation of it. And then there's a Native American Graves and Repatriation Act of 1990, when it was discovered that all of these museums and institutions had been collecting human remains over the years to study them. And essentially they just went into boxes and no one ever looked at them again. And the tribes kind of demanded their ancestors back so that they could continue their traditional cultural practices and the way their ancestors should be taken care of. And so in Oregon, the one that really pertains to us, we actually have an Indian Graves and Protected Objects Act that vastly predates NAGPRA. It was done in the 1970s. It was our first archaeological law, and it protects graves, burials, cairns, objects of cultural patrimony, and grave goods, essentially, that are associated with Native burials across the entirety of Oregon. Doesn't matter whose land it's on, and also demands repatriation of those objects back to the tribes. So it's unlike a lot of our other laws where the stuff goes to museums. These go back to the tribes, and they decide what happens to them. The Archaeological Objects and Sites Law essentially says it's against the law to damage, alter, destroy, or excavate an archaeological site or any archaeological objects in the state of Oregon on public or private lands. There are permit conditions for archaeological excavations, which essentially says who can apply for a permit and do research on archaeological sites and how that process will matter. And then the next one there is the administrative rules for doing it, which is the nuts and bolts, like how to send things to people and how to resolve disputes and stuff like that. So lo and behold, the big thing to get out of this is archaeological sites in Oregon are protected no matter whose land it's on or if it's in the sea. It's always protected, which is not something, I think only one other state has similar provisions to that. Not most states do not protect them on private lands. Okay, so when we talk about archaeology in Oregon, there are a lot of people sitting at the table. The first one is the agencies. So the big ones are federal and state agencies. All federal agencies are required to have a federal, it says protection, but it's preservation officer. I'm sorry, I did that wrong last night. And that person is usually back at DC, and they make the big, shiny ideas about what the program should look like, how it'll be administered across the entire federal agency and stuff like that. Most agencies, this is now both state and federal, have some kind of heritage program lead. Forest Service has a Region 6, which covers Washington and Oregon. For ODOT, they have a big regional lead that sits in Salem and makes kind of all those decisions. And then they usually have a set of regional archaeologists who are in charge of various lands, different forests, different BLM districts. For ODOT, it's regions. For state parks, it's their 3 management areas. They have some kind of person that's an archaeologist that's in ahead of those. And then they usually have field archaeologists, seasonals, temps. They go out and actually do the on the ground, bigger projects and stuff like that. So when we're talking about federal agencies, our big players in Oregon are the Forest Service and BLM. They own more land in the state than any other agency, anyone else, I think. And they have to manage those lands, and they have a lot of archaeological sites on those lands because they've never been developed for the most part. BPA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Army Corps deal with a lot of work on not their own lands, but they have to do this work ahead of transmission line projects. Army Corps does a lot of restoration of watersheds and things like that. They have to do this work ahead of those projects. And then for state agencies, they don't have to follow the federal regs, except for ODOT, unless it's federalized. But they do have to follow the state regs. So they have their own series of archaeologists. And I think there are 5 state agencies with archaeologists currently, and more that should have them. But they're kind of the big guns, I guess. And Jessica's one of them. So next.
And the reason ODOT has to follow federal agency is because of the money. That's where the money comes from.
They get a lot of money from federal highways. And so instead of having federal highways out here doing work, they have an agreement that lets ODOT do that work for them.
Can I ask a stupid question? Oh,
yeah. If anyone has questions, please just raise your hand or yell.
So does DAS have an archaeologist?
DAS does not have an archaeologist. They should have some kind of heritage protection specialist.
That's what I was thinking. Anyway, sorry.
They
Yeah.
own a lot of old buildings and archaeological sites. Yeah.
Yeah.
Department of Forestry doesn't either, and they have a lot of archaeological sites on their land as well. So the next player is the cultural resource management consultant, or the CRM firm. Consultants. Oregon has over 100 firms that I know of that are working currently, and they are everything from one person to a massive corporation that spans the entire United States and just has a branch in Oregon. Some firms are huge, some firms are tiny, and then they kind of spread across the state. Their expertise usually varies depending on, a lot of the small firms usually concentrate in an area. Like good example is like Mark Taveskov owns his own little CRM company, and he does a lot of work in the South, down near Medford and along the coast and stuff like there, because that's his area of interest. But other places like Heritage Resource Associates, they have 10 branches across the Western US, and they have hundreds of people working on staff every day to try and stay ahead of all their projects. They often contract with developers, tribes, agencies, local governments, and really anyone that needs archaeological work done. And their expertise can vary. They're usually very knowledgeable about archaeology, going out, digging, finding stuff, telling us what it means. But their expertise as far as helping people through like development processes or interacting with agencies or SHPOs or local code can really vary depending upon the agency or the firm, sorry.
Is that Eric and Jackie's building?
That is Eric and Jackie's building.
I recognize, yeah.
And they are not a CRM agency. They're just contract archaeologists. Another big player are the tribes. Oregon has 9 federally recognized tribes. 7 of the 9 tribes have tribal historic preservation officers, which we will get to later. Some of them have their own archaeologists that do their own work, either on lands owned by the tribe or held in trust, or do work that they're very interested in, sometimes landowners will contact them and say they found something, and they'll go out there and they'll help them because the landowner can't do it themselves. They don't have the money to hire someone, but the tribe is really interested in preserving what's there. They usually have a group of trained tribal monitors who they send out on large projects to kind of keep an eye on things. I've found that a lot of them can be better than archaeologists as monitors, and they do a fantastic job, but there is a difference between an archaeological monitor and a tribal monitor. And then sometimes they're affiliated with a larger tribal culture and heritage programs. Some of them are like in charge of teaching people how to basket weave and teaching people about how canoe culture played an important part in their lives, in addition to being archaeologists. And so a lot of our tribes have a lot under their umbrella, and they have a lot of work to do that pertains to the tribe's interests and maintaining their culture over time. And then a couple of our tribes also run their own CRM firms where they contract work out for different projects and things like that as a way to bring in income to their tribe. Next. Universities are also a big one. We have 5 universities that offer archaeology degrees in Oregon, and 3 of them offer master's or PhD programs. Those entities are usually their focus is on what the professors are interested in, as I'm sure many of us know, and these are kind of the driving force for creating the next generation of people that want to work in Oregon. Oregon is really lucky that of our 3 bodies, all 5 of our universities that offer archaeology degrees, they actually all work in Oregon, in addition to other places, but it's really rare. There's been a big push over the years to push for those foreign, like, ooh, we are in Oregon, but we do all of our work in Scotland or something like that. And so Oregon has been really lucky that we have a direct feeding mechanism from universities into the work field here. And then actually some of the universities run their own CRM firms as well. I know the one Eastern Washington runs their own, as does University of Oregon, and OSU used to, but they don't anymore. Next. And then there's museums. So every state has one dedicated repository that was created when the Smithsonian system was created. Ours is the University of Oregon Museum of Natural and Cultural History. And then they have the obligation under state law to designate other facilities that meet the federal qualifications to hold artifacts for the state. So we have 3 others: Oregon State University, Southern Oregon University, and the Dallas Discovery Center are all approved curation facilities. There are a few other ones that are trying to get that status. I believe Grand Ronde has built their museum to try and get that status, but I haven't seen any paperwork as regards to that yet. But they are kind of like the keepers of all this heritage and making it available for researchers in the long run. Some tribes run their own museums, a few do, and then some museums also do additional research using the collections that they retain, along with sometimes archaeologists affiliated with their museum. All right. And then there's the State Historic Preservation Office, which is where I work, the Tribal Historic Preservation Office, and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. So we are kind of in charge of regulating all the other players. We serve as the custodians for archaeological knowledge and documentation for the state. Consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office or Tribal Historic Preservation Office is required for all development projects, and that depends on whose land you're working on. Tribe TIPOs come into play if you're working on lands held in trust for the tribe, which is essentially tribal lands. People are required to consult with us that are dedicated to long-term preservation and management of cultural resources. We are obligated by federal law to keep an inventory of all known historic properties in the state of Oregon. That is for SHPOs, not for TIPOs. So a lot of TIPOs maintain their own records, but some get sent to us as well. We fund a lot of research through grants and our other projects. You see here a picture of John Pauly, the now state archaeologist, doing a project for free for a local landowner that had a really neat site on his property. He couldn't afford archaeologists to come out and do it. So John kind of took him under his wing and did this project for him so that he could build a little spring. And we got some really interesting information out of it. And then the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation is kind of our overlord. They create the models and the best practices for SHPOs and TIPOs. And then they step in when conflicts can't be resolved between us and other parties. All right, next. I'm trying to go fast because this is a lot. So there are 3 big driving forces for archaeology in Oregon. And the first one and the funnest is research. Someone sees something interesting and they want to pursue it and they want to learn more. And that's amazing. They're dedicated to increasing our understanding of the past. They're driven by individual interests and institutions' interests. And these are mainly carried out by universities, museums, tribes, and then SHPO, TIPO kind of. We more just fund people that want to do this kind of work or try to participate if we can. But I was able to participate in the Chinese Shrine Project because of this directive of our office. So thank you, Kimberly. Next. The biggest one, the one that we see the most often, are these development projects, the things that we see at the Landmarks Commission. Archaeological investigations are required ahead of every federal development project, and then we do request them for a lot of local or state development projects as well. The CRM or the agencies are usually the people that are leading this. The CRM and consulting firms are playing a part in this process. The tribes are usually there either as project proponents, project consultants, as a firm, or with tribal monitors, or for various other reasons. And then SHPO and TIPOs are regulating the whole process. Next. And then the last one is this long-term cultural resource management. So these are heritage locations that are owned by public and private entities, but are dedicated to their preservation. So we see this a lot in places like the Forest Service. Like, they own thousands, tens of thousands of archaeological sites, and their mission is to protect them and preserve them. And so they have to create these long-term maintenance plans to kind of try to stay ahead of any new development projects, to pick out the most precious to preserve, like our timberline lodges or our Crater Lake or things like that. And kind of everyone plays a part in these long-term cultural resource management projects. They're either affiliated with trying to protect them, or they own them, or they're trying to do research at them, or things like that. And these are usually our most noteworthy, our most known, our Fort Vancouver's, the places that people go on vacation to check them out, the places that people want to see. Next. Pass it along.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, so part of all of the work that we do in Oregon is, and the big push in most recent years is sharing what our knowledge is and the research and the outcomes with the public and interested parties. So there's been a lot of efforts. Unfortunately, the last couple of years, we've had to pull back a lot of those efforts on educating the public. So there's a couple of venues. There's things that make national news. One of the big ones that come to mind is the mammoth that was discovered under Reser Stadium. The reason I bring up that one is because it's technically not archaeology, but it was advertised as archaeology. And an archaeologist worked on it because it's old in the ground. Let's just throw an archaeologist at it. And it was a lot of fun. But anyways, I have a picture down here of Chelsea Rose on the Science Channel. This was actually a picture I took at my mom's. I was just happened to be watching the Science Channel, and boop, Chelsea Rose popped up. Chelsea Rose is an archaeologist in Oregon that does a lot of work, and she's incredible. Here she is on the Science Channel, actually talking about Easter Island, but she does do a lot of talks and presentations and everything outside of Oregon, but about Oregon. Obviously, public events are fantastic. There's the Archaeology Roadshow that gets hosted every year in Portland. It went digital this year because of COVID. Conference presentations are fantastic. That gets students and other academics out to present at conferences. Usually the audience are other archaeologists. However, it's becoming more interdisciplinary. And so you're seeing archaeologists go to other specialist conferences like geology or soils, things that can relate, that, and even trainings and additional that they might encounter in archaeology. And then public tours. So that's, it's part of our obligation of, when a site is discovered or researched or pulled out of the ground, it's essentially destroyed. It's destroying the site while we learn about it. And so for us, just take photos, put it in a bag and then in a box and then never talk about it again, or publish a paper that only our archaeology friends will see. It doesn't really do the due diligence we need to preserve Oregon's history, because one way to get people to care about something is to teach them about it. Next slide. So that comes into play about our future archaeologists. So one thing that we need to do is the picture on the far left is a field school. Oh, thank you for that. And field school teaches incoming students about archaeology and how to do archaeology properly. One of the biggest things that students learn is, while it's fun to have a big giant hole in the ground that you get to dig in, the middle picture shows what you get after excavating a big giant hole in the ground. And that is a lot of work. I know. Everything you pull out has to be meticulously recorded, cleaned, everything. So what we like to try to do too with our future archaeologists is teach them that it's not just about pulling old stuff out of the ground. And so there are multiple other means, and like I mentioned before, multidisciplinary measures that have not only helped us look at things a little differently and not have to pull everything out, but it brings more interest. So I have a picture here of something called Glimmer, which is like a GIS tool that looks at artifacts in a more analytical way. And hopefully that will inform our future archaeologists that while it's fun to dig, there are other ways of doing archaeology. And the most famous archaeologist, Indiana Jones, actually never did any archaeology. He was just a leader. So, yeah, that's all I have.
So yeah, so that's great. Archaeology is this big whole world and it has all this stuff and all these people in it, but where does the CLG come into that process? So the most common kind of interaction that we have is at that project level, project development level. We are reviewing active work in our ordinance that needs to take archaeology into consideration, because not only is it a federal requirement, but it's also a state requirement. And then also Salem is a certified local government, which means we get to comment on federal undertakings as well as state undertakings. So that's kind of our big thing. But Kimberly has actually built this really great and wonderful program, which means we get to do other things like participate in research projects, like some of the work you've done with your digs, creating the archaeology lab at the city of Salem, but then also kind of heading towards that long goal of long-term cultural resources protection across the whole city, which is a great place to be in, and not many cities have that. And so the city staff plays a huge role, and HLC only gets to kind of touch on it a little bit, but it's great. And I like it. I think it's a model for other CLGs in Oregon. And I am always promoting the cool stuff that we do when I have the chance. So next slide. And Jessica left. So Kimberly, why don't you finish us off? This is your slide anyways.
Yes. So we're going to end with education. It is Archaeology Month. So this whole presentation, thank you so much, Jessica and Jamie, for putting it together, is about educating each other and also the public about what archaeology is and also what it isn't. And then I just want to highlight too the great work we've done in developing partnerships with the tribes. So I think, as I've talked about previously, that we have signed memorandum of understandings with both the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde community. And we're working with Warm Springs now. And really what those MOUs are is really just about communication and developing a partnership and doing fun stuff and things. So we did do a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a reimagining of Columbus Day, earlier this month. And then we're working with them on doing an event in November for Native American Heritage Month. So what you see on the screen here is from the police facility public archaeology project that we did. And then Kylie, if she's still here, I don't know if she's still here. She helped us by doing a pop-up exhibit over there at the Willamette Heritage Center way back in 2018. So we are working with Willamette, and I have a student here. Is she still here? I'm gonna totally embarrass you. Elisa, am I pronouncing your name wrong?
Yep, she's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, I'm embarrassing you. Thank you for coming. She's working out in our lab right now. She's finalizing the processing of the artifacts we pulled out of the Jason Lee site right at the beginning of the COVID epidemic. Crazy, right? And we'll be working with the Willamette Heritage Center on taking some of those artifacts over to the Willamette Heritage Center for an exhibit there. So look for more on that to come. And also working with Willamette and the Willamette Heritage Center on a future public archaeology project, which we'll come back and talk to you about in the future. We all got a grant. Help me, Kylie. What's the name of the grant? Terrible. And a grant from Heritage, from the state, to do some archaeology to uncover and learn more about the Indian Manual Labor Training School there. So we're going to be doing some work there at the Willamette Heritage Center. So more to come on that. So I think I'll end the slideshow with that. I know everyone's getting tired and we have a few more things to talk about still. So
Jamie and I were also just you know, we wanted to make it short, but obviously it's hard to talk about like our
It's a lot.
careers.
It's broad and deep.
So
yeah.
I know everyone's tired, but if anyone has any questions or anything, no matter how simple or complex they are, feel free.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you. Are there any questions? I guess my one question would be like, why didn't you talk about agencies more? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Sports also works for an agency, but she's not an archaeologist, so she'd like that called out.
I feel like you are an honorary archaeologist,
I
Tracy.
mean, I have a master's in anthropology, which
Yeah.
I did remind Dennis of often. So
I will throw in there's actually quite a few archaeologists in Salem. Like you wouldn't expect that, but once COVID does its thing, every month there's a group of archaeologists that live in Salem that get together, and we have an appropriate drink, and we talk about the archaeology around the area and just get to know each other. And there's quite a few people that come out, so you'd be surprised. I feel like nobody thinks there's I say, I work in Salem and I'm an archaeologist. Like, oh, we have an archaeologist in Salem? I said, well, I'm not like the archaeologist in Salem. I'm one of many. So anyways, just throwing that out there. Never know where we are.
yeah, share the saga invite. Cool. Well, yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for giving that presentation. I feel like the pink was selected personally for me, so thank you so much. And yeah, no, I think that was so great, and it's awesome to be reminded of. But with that, yeah, like Kimberly said, it's getting really late. I'm technically on vacation, so let's keep moving along, guys. So it looks like next, let's fly through the interpretive panels if possible.
I'll just do a quick intro and then turn it over to Kirsten and my other great intern, Peter, who's still, yay, hi, Peter. Yeah, so we've been doing some great work, and when I say we, I really mean Kirsten and Peter taking the lead. You guys remember Kirsten? Yay! Yeah, and so doing some work all over the city, actually. So for the police facility, for the library, oh my gosh, what's the third one? I'm blinking.
Jason Lee.
For crying out loud, for Jason Lee. So they're gonna share what we've got drafts, and we will follow up if we haven't yet. Maybe Zach, you already sent them the drafts for you guys to look at, so you don't have to provide comments tonight. And Tracy, we are gonna wait until it actually turns to your birthday. No, I'm kidding. You're muted.
My network dies at 8. My internet just turns off. So
it's like you're done.
Yeah,
okay, good to know. All right, I'll be quiet now. So take it away, Kirsten.
Well, I'll go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen here. This one. Okay, sure. Okay, great. So just to kind of start off, there's a couple of different panels for the police facility. There's going to be a panel that focuses on sort of the Indigenous history and the archaeology, and then we've got a different panel that focuses on sort of more recent history at the area. So one of our, we kind of wanted to find a particular topic to focus on, and for this one we decided to focus on trade networks and sort of trade in the Willamette Valley during mostly the 1800s. And so we talk a little bit about some of the stuff that was found at the site, some common trade items. We do some featuring of Chinnikwawa words over here, which was a very common language that many people across the whole region spoke, which helped facilitate trade between Indigenous people, trappers, explorers, people who were here during that area. So this is kind of what we came up with. This is certainly drafty, so feel free to provide whatever comments you'd like. We'd be happy to have them. So let me know, and we'll definitely work those in. That's that panel. If anybody's got anything they want to say, feel free. But if not, then I'll just hop on to the next one. And we're having a little bit of technical difficulty with this one just because it's a very large image size. So hopefully this works. But if it doesn't, then I think Zach was able to send it to you. So that will be good. This one is going to be an electrical panel box. So if you guys remember a couple of years ago, we did some electrical panel wraps around the city. So this is going to be a similar electrical panel. And this is focusing on that area of the block where the police station is located now. So this block right here. So we've got some information about the block generally, and we go into this more specific story about sort of the chronicle of the mill race. There was a lot of argument between city, between private property owners, between business owners in the area about who should pay for this mill race, who should maintain it. There's like a lot of newspaper articles about people like drowning trash in the mill race. So it's actually a pretty fascinating story, I think. So we kind of focused on that because the mill race ran just south of where the police station is now, along Division Street. So I think that's a pretty fascinating part of Salem's history. We've got some photos. Just like a contextual note is that these boxes are where stuff on the panel is. So like this is where the handle is. So it's not just an empty box, it's where the handle on the box will belong. So again, very drafty. Feel free to give us some comments. I've already got a few comments back to our designers, so we'll be working through everything together. I'd be happy for your feedback.
I did just want to acknowledge, sorry for jumping in, that that thank you, Jessica, for your work on the police facility, the pre-contact one.
Yes, thank you very much.
You helped us with that.
Yeah. All right, and then this one is a little bit different. So this is not part of a city project necessarily. The developer wanted to do this interpretive panel, which is really quite cool. So we said, yes, we'd love to help you with that. And so this is what we've come up for. This is going to be at the apartment building where the Jason Lee house originally stood. It's gonna stand in, I think, the like little atrium area that they've got there for residents and people walking by. So a really cool opportunity to kind of focus on the history of that area. And so we decided to sort of focus on not necessarily the history of the mission, but the house itself with sort of some general information about the mission. I think what we'd really like to do here is sort of feature the bricks that were found and then also direct people back towards the Willamette Heritage Center where you can visit the actual house, learn a lot more about the context of the history, but you get to see these really cool old bricks. And one interesting piece is that they're going to put some of these recovered bricks in the panel, like in the construction of the bottom of the panel. So that's really exciting. So you'll actually be able to see the old bricks. So very cool. Feel free to let us know if you've got any comments on any of that stuff. And then I think, Peter, you're taking it over on the library ones, right?
Sure.
Perfect.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Peter. I'm Kimberly's other intern, and I've been helping with, let's share my screen here. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Another panel for the library since it's been remodeled. We're doing two panels of kind of the site history and then the history of the library itself. So this first one is just kind of general history of the site, what was there before, and the early days of Salem. And moving along, it's a big file, so it's slow. So the history of the development of the library itself from the original library, which was over on State and Winter, and then to the whole Civic Center redevelopment back in the 60s until the library was completed in 1972. And then further remodels in 1991 and again today. And these will be about, I think they're 3x2 size panels. And we just got these drafts done, so we'll, I suppose, probably send them over for comments.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Peter and Kirsten, for sharing those with us. We will definitely take a look at them. So just procedurally, Kimberly, if we just send emails to Zach, he will compile them and send them on.
Yep. Yeah, we're just looking for any comments, direction, both on the text and anything in the world of graphics that you're like, oh, that looks weird. Please fix that. Just now's the time to do it.
Yeah, for sure. No, they so far they look awesome. I think the incorporation of photos and text is really great. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. So yeah, thank you both for, sorry, I can't find you on my screen. Thank you guys both for putting those together. That's great. And I love how
Yeah.
much interpretation we have around.
I don't think
Yeah,
Zach
Commissioner
was able
Furneman.
I don't think Zach was able to send a lot of those. And just while they were up, I did see a few grammar and typos. So it'd be great if we could somehow get them.
Yeah, so there were some tech issues, but I will definitely find a way. So the police box wrap, I'm sure I will not actually be able to send you. Have to send you a link where you can access it online. Because even when I reduced the file, it was 300 megabytes, which is too much to put in an email. So
yeah.
So we'll do that one, and I'll make sure that all the commissioners have access to that, whether that be through an email or online.
I do just want to also throw out that we are, well, I'm not sure the timeline of it, but you know, the Beaver Board near the Jason Lee site, that one, so we did bring this to, we had a tribal roundtable earlier this week, and there was some question about, well, why is your interpretive panel only focusing on like the history and not the pre-contact period? And so the intention is to work with the, is it the Oregon Travel Information Council? I don't know who it is that's in charge of Beaver Boards, but yeah, to focus more on that pre-contact period for that Beaver Board so that they would work together. So just if for that context.
Cool. That sounds great. Yeah, thank you guys for coming. I think with that, let's move on to our work plan assignments. I'm not going to call on people, but if you have something to report on, raise your hand and we'll do it that way. I'm going to count to 7 again. Commissioner Ponce.
Quick one. So the enforcement subcommittee is meeting next week, and we will have an update to that report for recommendations for December. That's the goal.
Awesome. That's great, Commissioner Ponce. Thank you so much for taking that on and really moving it forward quickly. I think you're the perfect guy for it. So thank you. Commissioner Thomas, I think maybe you were trying to talk. Maybe not. Nope. All right. I'm going to restart my count. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Thomas.
Oh, yeah. No necessary update. Just hope to be working with Kimberly and staff to expand the stuff that we started and completed relative to multimodal tours here in Salem. So.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. I gave one of the brochures that you guys worked on Salem Heritage to someone to pass out. So they're getting out to the public. So
just as a short note on that, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but all that information is now online on the Salem Heritage and Culture. It's salemheritageandculture.com. Or is it Culture and Heritage or Heritage? Culture and Heritage.
We'll send you a link.
Sure, yeah, that.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Any other work plan updates? All right, hearing none. The last one, because we didn't have a meeting in August and I was not here for September, I just want to give mad props to Commissioner Zimmerman. He posted a really cool Army Corps Detroit Dam picture on our Facebook page. I tried to get Army Corps Portland District to do something with that, but that's a side conversation. I don't think it happened, but thank you. That was really cool. I was glad to see that. So thank you, Commissioner Zimmerman.
Yeah, Andy, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, no, I love it. And getting our meetings out there, it's great. Okay, we did that really fast, guys. Nice job. All right, newsletter work plan assignments. Fall letter looked great. Thank you to Zach and Kimberly. I think we had talked about the winter edition being energy efficiency focus. Thought that would fit in nicely with our new grant that we have rolling out this year. I think Commissioner Thomas, you mentioned you'd been working on some things. Is that still the theme we want to do? And if so, any volunteers for articles? Commissioner Fuller, you've been really quiet this meeting.
I have. Yeah, I dropped the ball on an article last time, but I've still got one in the works that can make its way into the winter edition. So I'd be happy to put one in along with the the energy efficiency slew. I think honestly, there's aspects of the wild and violent and unpredictable nature that we've been having recently that can lend itself to talking about energy efficiency, and also the creation of Minto Brown. Still, those things can be put together, given the terrific winter storm that caused those islands to not be islands anymore. So
no, that'd be great. Cool. I love it. So great. Commissioner Fuller was quiet the whole meeting and then volunteered himself for something. I like that. So perfect. Commissioner Ponce.
Yes. You know, I have a little article that we can probably fit into the energy theme of things on the Justice Building, the window renovation that came before the committee last.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I actually realize now it probably was you and not Commissioner Thomas that said that. So my bad. So yeah, that'd be great. So it sounds like, so we've got the chair's letter. Commissioner Fuller is going to do something talking about weather and Minto Brown. I think that'll be awesome. We'll have something on the Justice Building, which will be really great, and like windows. Zach, do we probably need one more?
Yeah, I think one more. Yes, can it not hear me?
Yes, no, we heard you. We just were processing.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I've been having some issues with my mic, so I wasn't sure.
No, you're good.
Yeah, same here. Like camera issues. Like I don't know where on earth it is going.
No, you're looking good
at any given time. But yeah, no, I had volunteered last time to do a piece on the residential. I thought that who was it that just did the Steve? You were going to do commercial. I was going to do residential. Perfect. And so I'm still on board with that, but I asked 2 months ago the last time that we met, I asked what happens when it happened. Like, I have no idea what that process is. Like, do I submit a rough draft? Do you got, like, I just need to know the process so I can put it in my calendar and get it done.
Sure. Usually I just take whatever you send me, and I generally won't change language at all, generally. The only thing I may do is introduce additional paragraph breaks, just because when it's read on a digital device, sometimes those large chunks of text get really heavy on the eyes, so I'll break it up a little bit. But other than that, I'll just throw it together. If you have photos to go with it, that's fantastic, and I will use my best judgment to put them where they go. But that for this one, this is the December.
So like 200 word, 100 word. Like I have no, like I write professional papers, and
I would
that is like always a thing. It's like you have X, Y, and Z. Like I'm not sure what to give you.
Sure, I would say in between 300 and 500 words.
Okay.
That's 300 and 500, not 3 and 500.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
And Commissioner Thomas, I honestly, I do mine in a Google Doc, and I just share the Google Doc link with Zach, but I'm sure you could do it in the body of an email, or like a Word doc would also work for him. So yeah.
Right. I've gotten it in all three ways. And this should theoretically go out the week of the 20th of December. So I'd like it, the articles, the week of the 13th.
Yeah, that's what I needed to know. So the week of the 13th of December.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, which is good because I put on my calendar November.
Oh yeah, no, you got time.
You'll be first in December.
Yeah. And then I'll work with because I'm already writing other papers for my professional stuff. So I'll work with Steve and make sure that we're not duplicating any efforts on I think it's great timing to come out with an article on like how to weatherization your house or your business or whatever.
Cool.
So.
Awesome. So it sounds like we've got the chair's letter, Commissioner Ponce doing commercial, Commissioner Thomas doing residential, and Commissioner Fuller doing nature and parks and rivers. So I think that'll be a great winter newsletter. We'll get those to you by December 13th. They can go out before Christmas, a gift to us all. Cool. Yes. Thank you everyone for volunteering. Yes, sorry, Zach.
I don't want to extend this any longer, but Kim does have a thing. We've been approached by a radio station who wants to do features. They read our newsletter, and they'd like to feature stories like the ones we share in our newsletter through some sort of audio segment. So the idea is that we would record potentially through Zoom, just like 3 to 5 minute stories like the ones that we do in the articles, if that's something that the commission is interested in doing. Kim has more information, but this is the time we were supposed to bring it up. So
yeah, definitely. I would ask, could we maybe approach each article writer individually to see if that's something that's of interest to them? I don't want to put everyone on the spot. Some people may feel more comfortable than others. Does that work?
we were gonna try, like, I think Andy, I had forwarded you the initial outreach, and I did talk to the gal at KMUZ. So they, just to give you a small amount of context, the local radio station has a dedicated audience who loves history. So Deb Meagers, for those of you who knew her when she worked for the city, then she started doing Salem History Matters, and she recently retired. So there's a whole bunch of people who are like, we want to learn more about Salem history. So I did say that, we couldn't commit to doing a full show of our own. So this is kind of the compromise place where we can, on our own, record short little vignettes, for lack of a better word, and then send them to them. So yeah, we thought we would take the fall newsletter. I say we, but I really mean Zach, using the model of Zach being producer, right? And then each of you who did write an article, maybe think about whether you're comfortable recording an interview or something. And so for fall, is that who wrote? So is it Andy? Did you write one? So you could be our guinea pig.
yeah. So it'd be of the commissioners is Andy and Tracy, and then otherwise our articles were written by staff. So.
Anyway, yeah. So we'll give it a try. I think I say we, but I really mean like Zach trying to figure out the technology piece, and then hopefully it'll be easy. You tell me it's easy, so I imagine it'll be easy. Hopefully fun.
Perfect. All right, we will. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where to move my camera. Perfect. All right, so yeah, we'll Andy and I will look for Zach to talk about that. Sounds like we got a great winter newsletter. All right, last but not least, guys, officer report. Take it away, Kimberly.
I really don't have anything other than I just wanted to let you know that there is going to be potentially an invitation coming your way from the Salem Art Association for a special VIP to the what's VIP? Anyway, the opening of an art exhibit focusing on Indigenous history for Native American Heritage Month. And that VIP event, I mean, for lots of reasons I won't go into now, is on November 11th, which is Veterans Day. I always get it wrong, Veterans Day, and most of you probably have it off. So you'll see that coming hopefully next week. And then other than that, just a heads up that Urban Development has hired HRA to do an initial or a survey. They came earlier this year. This is for mitigation of the adverse effect of the redevelopment of that church, adaptive reuse of the church in the Grant neighborhood. And they are not able to do, I think we recommended, or you recommended rather, the whole neighborhood. They're doing a subset of the neighborhood. So so they'll come afterwards to share their findings with the HLC. So I just wanted to let you know that was happening.
Kimberly, can you share with the HLC the signed executed copy of that MOA?
I can.
Sweet.
Are you making a scrunchy face? You're making a scrunchy face.
I want to know what they agreed to.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, yes, Zach.
I realized I have two small things that kind of fit under this. So the city is doing a survey for all of our boards and commissions on equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I'll be sending that to all of you soon, and hopefully you can fill that out when you get that. I do encourage all of you to do that. And then the other thing is that we are approaching the end of the year, and we have 3 commissioners who are at the end of their term, but they're all eligible to continue for another term if they would like to. So I believe at least one of you has already reapplied. But for the others, I'll be sending you an email if you haven't gotten all. I think you already got
Can
one
we
from,
say who they are? Is that rude?
So I think we can, yeah. Commissioner
Kelly!
French, Commissioner Thomas, and
Thank you,
Commissioner
Andy.
Zimmerman.
And Andy already reapplied, I think. Right?
Yep.
Tracy, it all depends on the sale of your house.
It does. It's not for sale currently. So I am in Washington State right now, so that doesn't do us much good.
No, if you own property, you can still serve.
That's true.
And Jamie, Jamie.
Perfect.
I know you're making a face.
It's been a long 6 years, and I'm.
I know, Jamie, but you're eligible to re-up. But I know.
All right.
Find your replacement if you're.
Robert's done. Sold.
Does he know? Isn't he having a baby?
He already applied. It's fine.
I think, Richard's still on the call. I think he's basically just volunteered himself to be a new commissioner by sticking around this long.
He said no.
No. Oh man.
No,
I thought he was like,
is he still listening?
I don't know. Maybe he forgot to log off. All right. Perfect. Is that everything? Okay, perfect. Is there anything else we need to discuss?
A happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to Kimberly, which was yesterday.
Jessica, when was yours? A few days ago. Yeah, happy birthday.
I didn't know that. Okay. Yes,
anyone else with a birthday?
To all the
Mine's
Libras.
on Monday.
Happy birthday, Andy!
Happy birthday.
A lot of October birthdays. All right.
That's right.
Yes.
Exactly. I think Carol said that was like, I don't know, there was a high probability we would get anyone in a room. You have lots of birthdays.
Schwartz's birthday.
Yes. All right. Guys, this was a long one. I think we got a lot done. I do have one last question. Well, I guess I will adjourn, but Commissioner Fuller, I want to know, is it Halloween decorations on the wall behind you, like a spooky saying, or what is this W? Sorry.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, there is a saying. It's actually it's a holdup from my birthday, which was last February. So that it's been a bit. It's a specific quote from the phenomenal American film Mean Girls, which I will not repeat over the course of this recorded meeting.
All right. Well, in that case, if there are no more items, we will adjourn so that we can hear what's on